Welcome to another edition of Talking Hoops. I'm your host, Mark Kern, with David Cassilo and Tim Bielik. And guys, this time next week, the playoff brackets will be out, so definitely a lot to accomplish this week. And just before we talk about what's coming up this week, let's catch up on last week. And what was the biggest surprise? Tim, start with you.
The biggest surprise, has to be the team that made the biggest leap this week was Willoughby South, winning at Menor. Against Menor, I should say. A dramatic game. Jack Whitaker's half-court buzzer beater. Follow along on Twitter. I didn't get a chance to be there, but just seeing it on Twitter, and then obviously the videos that were put up with Jack Whitaker's buzzer beater. It's a tremendous moment for that team, and it's a team that's been good all season. We just haven't really talked about it as much because their schedule hasn't given them a chance to showcase how good they are. But when you beat Menor, you've done something significant in my mind.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's a signature win for Willoughby South. Now they have one loss. They've got a win over Menor. It comes at the perfect time because Menor's in their district, so I don't know who would be voting for Menor ahead of them at this point. So Willoughby South is looking pretty nice when it comes to the brackets.
All right, and as you kind of hinted to, Dave, the playoff seeding definitely will be talked about a lot the next few days. What team could really help or hurt themselves this final week?
Well, it has to be Shaker Heights for me because they have just a brutal week. And right now, I think they're sort of sitting probably at that top seed in the Solon Euclid blended district. But they got St-Vincent-St-Mary on Tuesday and Garfield Heights on Friday. And really, they have to win either of those games, I feel like, to get that top seed because right now Garfield Heights and East-Tech are breathing down their neck.
Maybe even both, honestly. Yeah. So, Tim?
I'm going to go with one of the teams Dave just mentioned, East-Tech, and actually we'll have Brett Moore on in a few minutes to talk with us. But, East-Tech, they got Warrensville Heights on Wednesday, a team that beat them last year. Should be another great matchup. I think it's a good chance to East-Tech to continue to prove that, they can win outside of the Senate. They haven't lost a Senate game in 2 years. This is a team that went to the Final Four last year, and a win over Warrensville on Wednesday would go a long way to prove that they're not going to just they're going to continue to play well outside of the Senate and make themselves a strong case for getting maybe a 2 seed in that district.
All right, maybe one of the top surprising teams in the area is Walsh-Jesuit, undefeated, and it's not that they haven't played good teams. They've played Cuyahoga Valley Christian, they've played St. Ignatius. What's the ceiling for this team? Tim, start with you.
Ceiling, I think, has got to be, this team got a shot to make the regional round of the playoffs. When you look at this team, they not only can play good defense, but they have probably the more underappreciated players in Mitch Peterson. All the guy does is put up big games. I believe he has 8 games of 20 points or more. He had 29 points against Padua on Friday. They could score through him, and he's just a tremendous player. He's only a junior, so teams that go against him have one more year of him to worry about. To how far they can go is going to be tough. It depends on the draw because, they're going to have to go up against teams like Massillon Jackson and Cain Timken in that blended district, so it depends on where they end up, but I think they got a shot to have a very, very long postseason.
Dave, any disagreement?
Well, I don't know how much you can really add to that, but we also have Green in that district too, so 2 undefeated teams potentially. I think that Walsh-Jesuit could make it down to states if everything breaks right. Tim mentioned you got Massillon Jackson and Timken and Green all in the district, so it's very difficult, but if you get out of that, then you've got to deal with the other strong teams that win their districts. So regionals, realistic, state, possible.
Best case scenarios there. So maybe their best win of the year probably is against St. Ignatius. I saw St. Ignatius against St. Edward Friday. Weren't able to get the victory, but they looked very, very good in that game. And then to follow that up with a win against Canton Timken Saturday, that's a pretty good weekend for them, Dave. Just talk about what do you expect from them the next couple weeks?
Well, I think that they're going to be looking for consistency because right now it's good win, bad loss. Mm-hmm. Play St. Edward tough, almost beat them at St. Edward. 2 weeks prior, they get blown out at home against St. Edward. So it's trying to establish, winning a game and following that up. Let's win 2, 3 in a row because that's what you need to do in the playoffs.
Tim, for you, when you look at them, a lot of players play. Do they have that one guy who can, win the game if they need a basket at the end?
Well, the guy that's had a good year for them is Andre Wolford. I think he's been very strong all season. The question for them is, can they get a second guy to go with them, whether it be Devin Stover or somebody else? And when you look at the teams, that are going to be in that blended district with them, like St. Ed, Lorraine, Berea Mid-Park, all of them have at least one go-to guy that they can rely on. St. Ignatius is going to go far just because I think they play great defense. With a guy like Draymond Jones in the paint, it's going to be tough to go to the bucket against him. You're driving to the basket. But, it's going to depend on if they can find a second guy to provide some complement to Andre Wolford.
All right, and obviously conference championships could be on the line in the next week or so. Dave, what's the conference that you think has the most excitement left in it?
I'm going to go with the Southwestern Conference. We got Berea Mid-Park in the lead right now, just barely over North Olmsted. Brecksville's still alive, and Berea Mid-Park has to play Brecksville and North Olmsted before the season ends. So I think it's just going to be a tremendous finish, much like last year.
All right, Tim?
And I'm going to go back to kind of the conference I've been talking about for about the last month and a half, the West Shore Conference. You know, at one point this was a four-way tie. Now it's kind of sorted itself out through attrition. Bay's at the top with Midview and Elyria Catholic tied for second place. Midview right now it's been a team that I think is kind of you know snuck up there because they don't exactly have the great record that a team like Elyria Catholic or Bay has, but you know beating EC in overtime, they get Bay on Tuesday night, they win. This could throw the conference race to even more chaos than it's been all season.
I don't know, we got a lot of games Tuesday, but what's the game this weekend you're most excited for?
I think the biggest game is Shaker Garfield because of what we talked about earlier, just the implications for the Solon Euclid blended district. Coaches can start voting on Thursday, so you wonder how many are going to hold off into that game. I think most should because it's going to give a huge barometer on what team is playing better right now.
All right, Tim, another game?
I don't know if there is another game. I think that is the game because I think it's going to shape, you know, not only that district, it's going to shape the state Final Four picture. I really believe it because those two teams should be the top two seeds in that blended district. That game, if Dave's right, if, you know, the coaches, you know, kind of wait till the end of the action Saturday to decide, you know, all right, who's going to be number one, who's going to be number two, and down on the line, that game's going to decide who's the number one seed, who is going to try and have the easy road, and who's going to, you know, play for a shot for a trip to Columbus.
All right, and we kind of hinted at them earlier. Tim, you talked about them. Just real quickly, Willoughby South, what's their ceiling?
I think their ceiling is, you know, they can make it to a district final. You know, they proved they're versatile. When you win against Mentor, that's no small feat. That's a tough team to beat. And I like, you know, Willoughby South's versatility. They have a bunch of guys that really have some balance offensively. I like what Anthony and Jamil Coleman bring to the table as far as scoring goes. This is a team we kind of maybe overlooked a little bit, not anymore with what they did to Mentor.
Dave?
I think the district is a little too tough when you look at Shaker, Garfield, East-Tech, Bedford, Mentor, Warren Harding, Cleveland Heights. I mean, Willoughby South is a very good team, but there's also a lot of other good teams in there. So it's going to take some monster performances to go very far in the playoffs.
All right, and one of those teams you mentioned there is East-Tech. We'll speak with Coach Brett Moore in a couple minutes. But when you look at East-Tech, this is a team, you saw them in the Senate League Championship, had to hold on to get that victory against Glenville, but to win that conference for 2 straight years, how good does East-Tech look in your opinion?
They look very good. I think the talent is definitely there. I mean, I walked away saying that this team can do what last year's team did. It's just a matter of, you know, finishing games and raising their level of play when they're playing teams outside the Senate League. So we'll get a good test on Wednesday against Warrensville.
And, I mean, a big reason why they were able to do that last year is the tournament style. You see it in the NCAA tournament, the team that gets hot. And, Tim, they have the firepower to do that.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, stuff in tournaments, how guards can make the difference. I mean, it's hard not to think that East-Tech might have 2 of the better guards in Division I in our region with Markel Johnson and Anthony Carmen. We've seen Johnson continue to build off his breakout freshman season. He's leading the team in scoring. He's just such an explosive offensive player. He can really do it anyway from shooting the ball to driving to the basket. There's really not a lot he can't do. And he's still got so much more time to get even better, which is scary for the rest of the Senate.
Absolutely. And now we are joined by East-Tech coach Brett Moore. Coach, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Not too bad. Coach, Dave was at the game against Glenville. You guys were able to hang on and get another Senate League championship. Just talk about that game. You guys had a big lead, but you really had to hang on at the end of it.
The biggest thing was I tried a tactic that I'll probably never try again. But, you know, we just didn't do a good job of executing down the stretch. And for my years of playing against Glenville, they hit you with, like, waves, and they're usually based on emotion. And we've handled the first 2, which are the first and the third quarters, but the fourth quarter, they just throw the kitchen sink at you, and we didn't do a good job of handling that. But, you know, fortunately, we rallied, and we persevered at the end. But we definitely have to work on just reestablishing the chemistry with Ad and Keith, and you know, I think we'll be fine. I think we have 3 quality games to reestablish ourselves, and you know, just get some chemistry going, and going into the tournament, we'll have some momentum.
Coach, Obviously, last year's team was a special group, but do you think the talent is there to be better than last year's team?
What I'm looking for is just more guys to step up as far as my role guys. As far as like the nucleus of my team, I think this team is just as talented, if not a little more talented than last year. But the biggest key is going to be who's going to step up off the bench, and just from the guys who just play limited roles. Which one of those guys are going to step up? Because last year I had Samaj Taylor and Sante Lowe and Dimitri Krosky, and they were all game-changing players. When I put them in the game, whatever I put them in for, they went in and achieved that goal.
Coach, another question about, the one you had last year and how it translates to this year. I know you talk about how every team is different year to year, but even just the last few weeks, with this season wrapping up and heading towards the postseason, with the guys that played last year, how do you feel like, they've taken those lessons from that postseason run last year and translated them to what's happened the last few weeks down the stretch?
Well, you saw Anthony step up. They were very poised in the city championship. The biggest key is that they come into the game mentally prepared. I can't say that for those three guys last year. A lot of the leadership came from the seniors I had last year, but these guys have not had a mental letdown going into a game this season, and I'm proud of them for that, and I really appreciate having that type of leadership going into the tournament.
All right, Coach, and you've played some tough teams such as St. Ignatius and other quality teams, St. Edward this season. How's that going to help you in what should be a loaded district?
Because those teams, every team that we play, I try to set my schedule up to according to the types of teams we're going to see throughout the tournament, and I think that we've done another good job of doing that, especially adding St. Ed and St. Ignatius teams that we may potentially see in the regional. And also, just continuing to play teams like Barberton and Finley. Finley, they come out of a different region or different district across Western Ohio, but they're definitely along the lines of the teams that we see when we get deeper into the tournament. So we're poised to make a big run, and we're looking forward to duplicating and finishing the job that we didn't finish last year.
Coach, you have the big seeding meeting coming up on Sunday. Coaches are voting ahead of time. Do you believe that you deserve to be the top seed in the district, and how important is seeding at this point?
I feel like we deserve a top seed, but at the same time, I don't do the voting, and I also know that we are the cream of the crop in our league, and I know that our league is not viewed as a power league. So if we don't get it, it's no big deal because you still have to play the game. So I know that we'll be a top 4 seed, definitely. I'm not going to take anything away from what Shaker's doing and what Garfield's doing. But despite our league not being the strongest in the area, I still feel like toe-to-toe with those teams, I still say we come out victorious.
Coach, obviously, when people talk about East-Tech, the first name that comes up is Markel Johnson. He obviously burst onto the scene as a freshman, and as a sophomore this year, he looked even better. What have you seen him grow? How have you seen him grow, even, just throughout his sophomore season?
He's, for one, he took upon himself to take a leadership role. He said he wanted to be a leader, and I told him that I would help him through the process of becoming a leader. Because he's not necessarily, he's more of a leader by example, but he's coming to be a better communicator with his teammates. But the biggest thing with Markel is that for how good he is, he's like super coachable. Like you can tell him, and he hangs on. I make sure I tell him the right things because he hangs on to every word. Everything I teach him over the course of the season, I've seen him apply it, and just I can't say enough about Markel. He's a great kid, high character kid, and he's making commitments to other aspects of basketball that's going to help him, be the best he can possibly be.
All right, Coach, thank you very much for joining us, and best of luck in what could be another special season.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And
thank you for having me on.
Thank you very much. And you look at East-Tech, as he said, definitely has the resume of a team that deserves a top seed. But regardless, like he said, they have to win the game. Is this a team that you think Dave could get back to state?
I do. I mean, when I look at the district, as I said earlier, I think the Solon-Euclid-Bundy district is very, very deep. But I think there are 3 teams that are standing out right now: Garfield Heights, Shaker Heights, and East-Tech in no order. And I think all 3 of those teams are legitimate state title contenders.
And I think when you look at those 3 teams, Tim, each one of those teams has a decent kind of an advantage on the other team. Obviously, Issa Mod is a player that the other 2 don't have. But when you look at those 3 teams, what's maybe the difference that you think between them?
I mean, I'm just looking at all 3. I feel like, East-Tech, they obviously had the intangibles. They were there last year. They know what it takes to win, and they have, another big 3 with Markel Johnson, Anthony Carmen, and Corey Cullum to really give, them the ability to keep teams from doubling 2 guys, because if you double 2 guys, you're going to leave either 1 on 1-on-1 and 2 wide open, or you're going to create too many opportunities. Shaker Heights has the best player out of those 3 in Issa Ahmad. I don't think there's any question about that. He is the biggest game changer out of those 3 teams, just because he does so much on both ends of the floor. Garfield Heights, they have the best 1-2 combo with Frankie Hughes and Willie Jackson. Willie Jackson the last few weeks, I can say he's probably played as good as anybody. He's just so physical. He's so aggressive attacking the basket. He just attacks the board so well. And if Frankie Hughes has that outside shot falling combined with Willie Jackson's ability to attack the paint, there's not a lot of teams that I think could slow down Garfield. So, yeah, I think just between those 3, any of them have a real shot to get to Columbus.
Should definitely be interesting, Dave. When you look at East-Tech, they did that last year without any playoff experience. You don't see that a lot.
No, you don't. And I think the thing with East-Tech, and I'm going to disagree with you a little, Tim, get our around the horn on here, but I don't necessarily think that Garfield Heights has the best 1-2 combo. Frankie Hughes and Willie Jackson are really, really good, but I think that Markel and Anthony Carmen are also really, really good. And I think the thing with East-Tech is, and you saw this last year, when they played Shaker Heights, yes, Issa was the best player on the floor, but East-Tech had the next 4 best players. And that's what makes them so dangerous. Now, Shaker and Garfield are dangerous in their own ways. They both play really solid defense, and Issa's obviously the best player. So it's going to be very, very interesting. And to get back to your question, I think that you need a little playoff experience, but East-Tech had some of that. They were in a district final 2 years ago, so they had it. And one last thing on the Solon-Euclid district we're going to be talking a lot about, because it is the most talented district this year. Don't sleep on Menor. They're going to get Andrew Valeri back. They're still a well-coached team. They're still a good team. They almost beat Shaker on Friday. This team is not done, even though they lost 2 games this weekend.
That's the thing. They lost 2 games by 3 total points, 1 on a half-court shot. So definitely tough. And let's you talked about it, Tim. Moving up in the top 25 was Willoughby South. Were there any other teams that moved up or down?
I'm continuing the trend of, Willoughby South. It's kind of like the week of the East Side starting to emerge. You saw Kinston come into the top 25 after they upset Bedford last week. Beechwood moved up a spot. They're playing well, now that they're playing a schedule of teams more kind of towards their school size, more D3s and D4 teams. They're starting to surge. Willoughby South, obviously, a 10-spot jump. We just haven't seen that probably since our time of doing the poll. A 10-spot jump in 1 week, just absolutely tremendous.
It was nuts.
That's a good way to describe it.
Also, a team that you're going to see tomorrow, CVCA. We really have not talked that much about them this year. It's our own fault. I mean, Mike Peters is a tremendous guard, and they're hovering right now at 16. Only 3 losses this year, twice to Timken, once to Walsh-Jesuit. This is a team that's going to make a lot of noise in Division II.
Should be an exciting game. Definitely looking forward to being there. And before we wrap up the show, let's talk about the big game tomorrow night. That is Shaker Heights and St-Vincent-St-Mary. You look at this, Shaker Heights you alluded to, really 2-0 would most likely clinch them the #1 seed this weekend, but it's not going to be easy. When you look at their matchup against St-Vincent-St-Mary, I think there's definitely both teams can really attack in a certain area. Where can Shaker Heights win this game?
Well, I think that St. Vincent-St. Mary has some talented players, and Jabri Blunt is good on the inside, but Issa Ahmad is just a decisive advantage for Shaker. St. Vincent-St. Mary has better guards. I think it's a really even game. It's going to be a crazy environment. Shaker's home. St. V hasn't been playing its best lately, just kind of getting by. They nearly lost to Hoban last week. It's a coin flip. I couldn't tell you who's going to win this one.
All right. David will be covering the game. So, Tim, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who wins and why?
I'm going to pick St. V to win this one, and I think it's going to be for the same reason I think Dave just kind of described the East-Tech Shaker factor. Shaker might have the best player in this game, but I think St. V has the 3 next best players in the game, and I think that makes a difference. And especially when you have those guys like Henry Bally, Josh Williams, Javon Graves, you know, a team that can spread the floor with those guards and shoot the outside shots, a team that can take Issa Ahmad and make him a non-factor just because obviously a team that's deadly at three-point range and can hit him if you can hit him at a 50% clip, that neutralizes pretty much anything a post presence can do.
Here's what I will say. It is a year to the almost exact day that Shaker Heights at home beat St. Edward last year, a team that, much like St. Vincent-St-Mary at the time, people thought was unbeatable. So who knows what can happen.
Should be exciting. I am going to agree with Tim, though, on this one. I think St. Vincent-St-Mary gets the job done. And, guys, when we have this show next week, we will have the playoff brackets.
That'll be fun.
Definitely will be, as you said.
March Madness.
March Madness.
Looking forward to it.
So, for Tim Bielik and David Cassilo, I'm Mark Kern.